Throughout history, certain assassinations have altered the course of nations. It is a stark and honestly often brutal truth that the actions of one individual or sometimes a small group can unleash forces that reshape entire societies, topple empires, and plunge the world into conflict. These are not merely stories of political intrigue, they are pivotal moments where the delicate balance of power is, well, irrevocably shattered. The sudden, violent removal of a key figure from the world stage creates a vacuum, a void into which new ideas, new leaders, and new conflicts can rush, often with devastating consequences. The echoes of these single, fateful acts can reverberate for generations, their impact felt long after the initial shock has subsided. In the vast and complex ecosystem of human civilization, the loss of a single, powerful individual can trigger a cascade of unforeseen events. Much like the removal of a keystone species can cause an entire ecosystem to collapse. The intricate web of alliances, policies, and personal relationships that define an era can be torn asunder in an instant. What follows is a period of immense uncertainty and change, a struggle for dominance and direction that can define the future for millions. Understanding these moments is crucial to understanding how our present world came to be. Join me as we journey back in time to witness these critical turning points. We will navigate the corridors of power, the crowded streets, and the quiet moments just before disaster struck. Let's explore 5 famous assassinations that changed history, not just by ending a life, but by birthing a new and often turbulent era. We will examine the intricate chain of events that followed each act, revealing how a single death could redirect the great river of human history onto a completely different and often more treacherous path. We begin in Rome in the year 44 BC. Here, a political drama of immense proportions is reaching its bloody climax. The Roman Republic, a system of governance that had endured for nearly 500 years, was now teetering on the brink. At its heart stood one man, Gaius Julius Caesar. A brilliant general, a masterful politician, and a populist hero, Caesar had amassed unprecedented power. He had been declared dictator, perpetuo dictator for life, and for many in the Roman Senate, this was a step too far. They saw not a savior of the Republic, but a king, in all but name, a tyrant poised to extinguish the flame of liberty. The conspiracy against him was born in the shadows of the Senate, a clandestine brotherhood of men who called themselves the Liberators. Led by Marcus Junius Brutus and Gaius Cassius Longinus, they believed they were acting to preserve the Republic. They were patricians, aristocrats, who saw Caesar's reforms and his popularity with the common people as a direct threat to their own status and the traditional order of Roman society. They planned their attack for the Ides of March, a day when Caesar was due to attend a meeting of the Senate. It was here, in the theater of Pompeii, surrounded by symbols of the Republic, that they would strike their blow for freedom. On that fateful day, as Caesar took his seat, the conspirators surrounded him. Under the guise of presenting a petition, they drew their daggers. The attack was swift and brutal. Stabbed 23 times, the great leader fell at the foot of a statue of his former rival Pompey. But the freedom the assassins hoped to restore was a phantom. Instead of saving the Republic, they had plunged it into a new and even more destructive cycle of civil war. The power vacuum left by Caesar's death was not filled by a restored Senate, but by a new generation of ambitious men, most notably his great-nephew and heir, Octavian. The Republic was dead, and from its ashes, the Roman Empire would rise. We travel forward nearly 2 millennia to a nation torn apart and honestly, just tentatively stitched back together. It is Washington, D.C., April 1865. The American Civil War, a brutal and bloody conflict that had cost over 600,000 lives, had just ended. President Abraham Lincoln, the steady hand who had guided the Union through its darkest hours, now faced a new, perhaps even greater, challenge: Reconstruction. His vision was one of reconciliation, of malice toward none, with charity for all. He sought to heal the nation's deep wounds and reintegrate the defeated southern states into the Union with a gentle hand, a path that was already proving controversial. Many in his own party, the radical Republicans, demanded a harsher punishment for the Confederacy and stronger federal protections for the newly freed African Americans. In the South, meanwhile, resentment simmered. Among the bitter and defeated was a man named John Wilkes Booth, a well-known actor and a fervent Confederate sympathizer. He saw Lincoln not as a great emancipator or a unifier, but as a tyrant who had destroyed his beloved Southern way of life. Booth initially plotted to kidnap the president, but as the war drew to a close, his plans grew darker and more desperate. He decided that Lincoln must die. On the evening of April 14th, just 5 days after the Confederate surrender, President Lincoln attended a play at Ford's Theater. Seizing his opportunity, Booth slipped into the presidential box and, at point-blank range, fired a single shot into the back of Lincoln's head. The president died the next morning. The assassination sent a wave of shock and profound grief across the North and threw the fragile process of Reconstruction into chaos. Lincoln's moderate approach was replaced by the more punitive policies of the radical Republicans, leading to a prolonged and bitter struggle over the future of the South and the rights of African Americans, a struggle whose deep and painful legacy continues to shape the United States to this very day. Our journey now takes us to the early 20th century, to a continent that appeared on the surface to be at the zenith of its power and prestige. But beneath this glittering facade, Europe was really a powder keg of simmering tensions. A complex web of military alliances, rampant nationalism, imperial rivalries, and an escalating arms race had created an atmosphere of profound instability. All that was needed was a single spark to ignite a continental and ultimately global conflagration. That spark would be provided on a sunny June day in 1914, in the city of Sarajevo, the capital of the Austro-Hungarian province of Bosnia. The target was Archduke Franz Ferdinand, the heir to the throne of the vast and multi-ethnic Austro-Hungarian Empire. His visit to Sarajevo was seen as a provocation by many Serbian nationalists, who dreamed of uniting the South Slavic peoples into a single nation, free from Austrian rule. A secret society, known as the Black Hand, orchestrated a plot to assassinate the Archduke during his visit. They armed a group of young, desperate men, consumed by a fervent and deadly nationalism, and positioned them along the Archduke's motorcade route. The initial attempt failed. A bomb bounced off the Archduke's car and exploded, injuring bystanders. The procession continued, but a wrong turn by the driver delivered the Archduke's open-topped car directly in front of one of the conspirators, a 19-year-old named Gavrilo Princip. He did not hesitate. He fired 2 shots, killing both Franz Ferdinand and his wife, Sophie. The assassination set off a rapid chain reaction. Austria-Hungary, seeking to crush Serbian nationalism once and for all, issued an ultimatum to Serbia. When Serbia could not fully comply, Austria-Hungary declared war. The alliance systems clicked into place like dominoes, dragging Germany, Russia, France, and Britain into the conflict. The spark in Sarajevo had ignited the Great War, a cataclysm that would kill millions and redraw the map of the world. We now turn to the Indian subcontinent in the immediate aftermath of its hard-won freedom. Here in January 1948, a man revered by millions as a Mahatma, or Great Soul, was trying to quell the violence that had erupted with independence. Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, the architect of India's non-violent struggle against British rule, was a global icon of peace. His philosophy of satyagraha, or truth force, had inspired not only his own people but countless others across the world. He had shown that a powerful empire could be challenged not with weapons, but with moral courage and peaceful civil disobedience. However, the independence he had fought for had come at a terrible price. The partition of British India into the 2 nations of India and Pakistan had unleashed horrific sectarian violence. Hindus, Muslims, and Sikhs, who had lived together for centuries, were now engaged in a brutal slaughter. Gandhi, frail and in his late 70s, was heartbroken. He undertook a fast unto death in Delhi to shame the leaders and the people into stopping the carnage. He pleaded for tolerance and unity, insisting that Muslims who chose to remain in India should be protected and treated as equals. This message of peace and religious tolerance was seen as a betrayal by some Hindu extremists. They believed Gandhi was appeasing Muslims and weakening the newly formed Hindu-majority nation. One such man was Nathuram Godse, a nationalist who believed India should be a purely Hindu state. On January 30, 1948, as Gandhi was walking to his evening prayer meeting in New Delhi, Godse emerged from the crowd. He bowed to the Mahatma and then shot him 3 times in the chest. Gandhi's assassination was a profound tragedy for a young nation already reeling from the trauma of partition. While his death helped to quell the immediate violence, it robbed India of its moral compass at a critical juncture and dealt a severe blow to the dream of a truly secular, unified nation. Our final story unfolds in a world living under the shadow of the mushroom cloud. It is November 22, 1963. The Cold War between the United States and the Soviet Union is at its height, a tense standoff between two nuclear-armed superpowers. The American president is John F. Kennedy, a young, charismatic leader whose presidency had come to be known as Camelot. He represented a new generation of leadership, projecting an image of vigor, optimism, and hope. He had navigated the Cuban Missile Crisis, the closest the world had ever come to nuclear annihilation, and had launched the ambitious goal of landing a man on the moon. Despite his popularity, Kennedy's presidency was also a time of deep domestic and international turmoil. He was pushing for civil rights legislation that was fiercely opposed in the South, and his administration was deepening American involvement in the conflict in Vietnam. It was against this backdrop of hope and anxiety that he traveled to Dallas, Texas on a political trip. He was seeking to mend fences within the Democratic Party in the state ahead of the next year's presidential election. The sun was shining as his open-top limousine made its way through the cheering crowds in Dealey Plaza. Suddenly, the cheers turned to screams. Shots rang out, striking the president in the neck and head. The shocking, brutal event was captured on film, searing the images into the collective consciousness of a nation and the world. Kennedy was rushed to a hospital, but was pronounced dead shortly after. The assassination of the youthful president plunged the United States into a state of profound shock and mourning. It marked the end of an era of perceived innocence and optimism. The subsequent investigation, the mysterious murder of the lead suspect, Lee Harvey Oswald, and the enduring conspiracy theories have left a lasting scar on the American psyche, a deep-seated distrust in institutions that persists to this day. These assassinations not only ended lives but also changed the course of history forever. The fall of Caesar did not restore the Republic but instead gave birth to the Roman Empire. The death of Lincoln did not reverse the outcome of the Civil War but instead ushered in a bitter and protracted era of reconstruction. From the spark in Sarajevo that ignited a world war, to the extinguishing of Gandhi's light of peace, to the shattering of Camelot's dream, each event created a profound and lasting rupture in the fabric of its time. The loss of these leaders left behind vacuums filled with conflict, uncertainty, and consequences that no one could have predicted. These stories serve as a powerful and somber reminder of the fragility of peace and the immense impact that a single violent act can have. They demonstrate how history is not an inevitable, predetermined path, but a fluid and often chaotic process, susceptible to sudden, dramatic shifts. The world we inhabit today is, in countless ways, a direct result of these pivotal moments. The borders of nations, the nature of our political systems, and the deep-seated conflicts that continue to plague us can often be traced back to the echoes of a single gunshot, a single dagger's thrust. What might have been? It is a question that haunts each of these stories. What if the conspirators had failed? What if the driver had not made that wrong turn? What if the assassin's bullet had missed its mark? These are the unwritten chapters of our past. The lives lost were not just individuals. They were symbols of ideas, futures, and possibilities that were extinguished along with them, leaving us to ponder the world that might have been. Which event do you think had the biggest impact? Let us know in the comments. And if you found this journey through history compelling, please consider subscribing for more explorations into the moments that have shaped our world.